Many thanks for making a date on the marketplace today. Welcome back. Now, President of the Ghana-South Africa Business Chamber, Ashley Ricks, has urged government to focus on boosting manufacturing in order to tackle the current trade imbalance between Ghana and South Africa. Trade and investments between both countries have grown over the years, but there appears to be more activity from South Africa to Ghana. Mr. Ricks says Ghana must start producing more.
I think, as far as sort of trade imbalances go, if you need to increase your exports across the board, stop importing, start producing more in the country, increase your manufacturing. That is key. The one factory, one district that the government has now sort of implemented, that seems to be working, seems to be going strong. It's still relatively in its infancy, but we see a lot of positive coming from that. And I think to try and attract not just that, but also to try and attract foreign manufacturers to come and set up here, make it conducive, that they can come set up their manufacturing plants in Ghana, manufacture the raw products, and then export. And I think that's key. If you want to start having a look at the imbalance, the trade imbalance between South Africa and Ghana, Ghana has to start producing more finished products for export.
Now, the Finance Ministry says government is working on reviewing some tax exemptions it has granted businesses. This follows calls by the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, for some tax reliefs on their businesses. According to the association, this has become necessary to improve their businesses. But the Deputy Minister of Finance, Kweku Kwating, says government has exhausted all tax exemptions and as a result would rather substitute existing exemptions with more pressing ones.
The CET, there is allowance for any country to look at those imports that are critical and to vary that. We did something for our friends at Abosokai and the spare parts. We have done something for raw materials for production of medicine. So we have almost exhausted the quota, but the policy guidance we have from our Honourable Minister and government is that we take a second look at the range of exemptions that we have granted under the CET and to see which ones we can begin to switch. So that discussion we will have with you. Of course, we will look at it ourselves. We will look at those exemptions that we have given, but which importers have really not even taken advantage of. Then those ones perhaps are not helping us achieve the objectives of those interventions. So we will do that kind of work and free up space to deal with the electrical problems Mr. President spoke about and some of the issues you have mentioned. But once we have finished with those preparatory works, we will have a discussion with you and then we can decide on what to swap and how to do that.
Meanwhile, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, is pushing for a fixed rate at the country's ports for their businesses. According to the union, the practice where rates change every day due to the depreciating cedi is not helping them. President of GUTA, Dr. Joseph Obeng, made the call when the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, together with his team, interacted with the union.
Plead that if the depreciation of the currency is going to continue, then there should be a strategy also for the trading community to have some kind of respite. So we will plead with you if we can peg the dollar for the purposes of duty payment for maybe 1 month, because it's not our fault that the currency is depreciating. If care is not taken, what we are going to think is that government deliberately let the currency depreciate so that when we pay more duty, you get more. Yes, that's the layman's way of thinking, and we think that because first we knew that there was a deliberate policy of devaluation. So then, is it a modern way of devaluation so that we pay more? We pay when we pay the duty and we change in more cedis. Government that's the assumption, and then justifiably so, somebody will be taking that is saying the right thing. So if we can peg the dollar monthly for the purposes of duty payment, then it will also help us.
Away from trade issues now, and microfinance institutions have over the years been drifting away from their core mandate of extending credit to small-scale business operators. There are concerns that these financial institutions are now straying into the functions reserved for traditional banks and playing roles that these banks should have played. Joy Business Philip Namfuri explains some of the reasons behind this mission drift in this episode.
Concept of mission drift, as I've put on the board here. And you may ask yourself, what is mission drift? Microfinance institutions in the country are supposed to provide financial services to the poor end, to the low-income end of the Ghanaian economy. So essentially serving poor people in the Ghanaian economy. Now, there have been some reports that a majority or a plethora of microfinance institutions are moving away from their core mandate, which is the provision of financial services to the poor. Now you ask yourself, who is in charge of microfinance institutions in the country? It's the central bank, the Bank of Ghana. They are vested with the authority to ensure that this pro-poor intervention, that is microfinance, is actually stuck to by these institutions. So now we ask ourselves, how then can we ensure that these microfinance institutions stick to their core mandate of helping the poor people by providing financial service to them? And academic literature has shown that, yes, indeed, provision of financial services can help lift people out of poverty. You may ask yourself, that what are some of the reasons why microfinance institutions may move away from serving the poor end of the market? And it goes back to one key reason, the profit motive. Ask yourself, why should I lend to these sectors of the economy or to these poor people which have high risks? As financial literature, as academic literature has shown us, that these people have high risks.
You're live on the marketplace for today with me, Emmanuel Abuaji Riafe. Moving on to other stories, Cabinet is considering fresh revenue measures proposed by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta for the mid-year budget review. Sources say these measures would look at some innovative strategies that would help deal with recent revenue challenges. According to the Finance Ministry, the presentation by Ken Ofori-Atta should be done before the last week of July. There's more in this report.
The Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta earlier this year confirmed to Joy Business that the review of the 2018 budget, or call it the mid-year review, would come with a revision to the revenue estimates as well as measures. However, it is not clear for now those actual measures that the Finance Minister has presented to Cabinet for consideration and whether some of these taxes would be increased or government would still focus on expanding the tax net. Sources, however, say there might not be any major changes to the current policies being implemented by government, but rather a normal review of the estimates that was announced in the 2018 budget. The mid-year review is part of the country's financial laws, which allows the Finance Minister to review some estimates and policy measures announced in the budget for that year.
All right, so still on this particular topic, we would want to engage economists with Data Bank Courage Boti to take a look at what aspects of the policy review of taxes that we should expect in the upcoming budget review. And Courage, if you can hear me, welcome to the marketplace. Now, the Finance Minister has already hinted of a revision of revenue estimates. Do you expect any tax policy reviews, or better still, increase in taxes? Hello, Courage.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, good afternoon to your listeners. If you remember from the previous review of the IMF, government has two obligations, either to raise revenue by up to 0.5% of GDP to be able to meet their fiscal target for the year, or they cut expenditure by some 815 million. Those were the two options IMF gave to government, and that is what it appears they will be working with. Now, coming into the mid-year, we'll all acknowledge that the Achilles heel of government probably over time has been revenue shortfalls. In 2017, over 4 months, revenue shortfall was in excess of 10%. Currently, the minister I heard yesterday say that the revenue shortfall for the same period this year is some 8%. So yes, there is kind of a slight improvement, but 8% shortfall is still quite marked. I mean, it's still significant relative to what we should be doing. And the problem of fiscal stabilization and then stabilizing the economies outlook really borders largely on our ability to raise revenue. The complaints about difficult economy, money not in people's pocket and all of that boils down to government expenditure and then how, I mean, shortfalls in revenue will lead to cuts in those expenditures and all of that. So we expect that, we are all expecting, just as you, that, I mean, in the media review, a proposal of either of these two will be put forward, either a measure to cut expenditure or a measure to raise revenues. I don't see new taxes being imposed. I think government acknowledge and a large amount of people acknowledge that it's a very lazy way of managing an economy. If you look at a population, a taxpayer population of around 6 million, and then we're saying that just about 1.5 million of that 6 million are honoring their tax obligations, then it is, for me, it is easier and it's more convenient to try to ramp up that tax mobilization effort. I mean, increase compliance. I mean, use the laws, arrest people who need to be arrested for evading tax and then all of that. Ensure the companies, the exporters are paying the right tax, put the monitoring mechanisms in place, plug the loopholes, use technology to mobilize revenue. If you do that, I mean, even doubling the taxpayer population from 1.5 million to 3 million should be nearly doubling your revenue target, which stands at some 41 billion currently. And so for me, that is a more realistic approach. And in my view, that is what I think they'll be leaning more towards. Because raising taxes is politically unpopular one.
Exactly.
And then, I mean, the issues that have to go with it, going through parliament and all of that, and the year is running, I think it's not the way to go. I'm sure they will be leaning more towards ensuring compliance.
Now, very well. Now, what about, because you mentioned that one other option is to cut down expenditure, that's government expenditure. Now, what kind of expenditure are we expecting? Is it going to be one of the flagship, programs, or what kind of exact expenditures are we talking about? I
mean, from the experience of 2017, you saw that when revenue shortfall was pronounced and there needed to be a cut, they cut expenditure really on 3 line items: goods and services to state agencies, capital expenditure, and an allocation to statutory funds. Those were the 3 things they cut expenditure, and really so because those are the things they really have control over. Flagship projects, they have political connotation because you say you do free SHS, because you say you construct railways, because you said you will do this nurses allowance and stuff like that. I mean, probably the political will to renege on those promises may not be there, but things like goods and services needed for the ministries, for the state agencies and stuff like that to do, if you don't supply enough, it may not be in the public domain like it will be if you are cutting expenditures or reducing allocation to nurses and stuff like that. Statutory funds, the allocations to those funds, government has that prerogative to manipulate, increase or decrease how much goes to those people based on revenue performance. And of course, CAPEX is also discretionary. They can decide to construct roads or not. They can decide to build bridges or not. I mean, so those are likely areas they may be cutting expenditure if need be.
Now, away from, revenue mobilization through taxation, another issue or another area that government also mobilizes revenue is through petroleum or petroleum sales. Now, we realize that in 2017 or in 2018 earlier, government pegged the benchmark at 55 thereabouts. But petroleum prices have gone up in recent times. Do we expect any policy announcement again in the budget review by way of petroleum revenue?
So I think in that regard, I will say no, because I think the benchmark petroleum price for 2018 is around $57.3 dollars per barrel. And then if you look at the average so far in the market, petroleum has largely traded above $70 for most part of 2018, which tells us it's above the average. Now, that is a positive for the revenue side. It's not a shock. a positive because you are gaining more from the world market than you actually projected. You use your budget, so that will be a cushion to revenue mobilization, really. So I do not expect a revision upwards of the target or benchmark petroleum price. In any case, it's just a target, a benchmark, what they used to do budget, for planning purposes, so that you can be able to project the revenue you expect from such fields. So I really do not expect an upward review of the target or benchmark price, because it's of no relevance. The gains from petroleum is actually a big boost to the revenue side of the budget now, and they want to keep it at that.
All right. Many thanks for your time. Courage Boti is an economist with Data Bank. And away from that, the Ghana National Petroleum Company or Corporation says a rigorous seismic survey is still ongoing in the Voltairean Basin onshore to establish a working petroleum system capable of producing significant amount of oil and gas. This was disclosed by the CEO of the National Oil Company, Dr. K.K. Sapong, in a speech at the signing ceremony at the University of Ghana, Legon.
We've just commenced exploration onshore, that is in the Voltairean Basin, which covers about 40% of Ghana's landmass. In the early 60s, some work was done. That's why it's always good, if you have the scientists, you should also have the historians and the record keepers. We've been able to have access to the data, and we believe that something is hidden there. So we are frantically prospecting there. Currently, we are doing seismic survey. We tumble on some technology which is also coming from capacity building, geochemistry. I knew of geosciences, and I didn't know you had to separate it into geochemistry, geophysics. I don't know whether there's geobiology, I don't know. And throughout the geochemistry technology, we've been able to take samples of soil and tested the existence of hydrocarbons, some gases, and methane, butane, and whatever. At least my O-level chemistry helps me a bit. And is quite indicative that there's something there. We don't know the extent, so we are exploring further. We are presently in there doing serious seismic surveys, having finished the geochemistry analysis, which seems to suggest the existence of a working petroleum system.
All right, so it's still live on the marketplace. Now, barely a year after being appointed as Chief Executive Officer of Airtel Tigo following the merger of the two companies, Joy Business can confirm that Roshi Motman has resigned from the second largest telecom operator in the country. Joy Business understands that Roshi Motman is leaving the company, having worked with them for 4 years and almost a year with the combined entity. Her resignation comes barely a week after the chief human resource manager of the company also left. For more on this issue, I've been joined in the studio by Norvan Aqua Hayford to tell us more. Norvan, where exactly is she going and why did she resign?
Well, for now, we don't have that details as with regards to where she is heading to, having resigned from the telecom operator, that is Airtel Tigo, and we don't know what she will be doing with her time. But what we understand is she actually resigned on her own and that she wants to take up new opportunities. We'll keep an eye on that and see where she will be going. Don't forget that in this particular company, that is Tigo, before they became a combined entity, that's Airtel Tigo, most of their CEOs have lasted about 3 years. She happens to be around for 4 years and also having been there. That
in itself is a source of concern. People think that, the rate of turnover of executives is becoming too much. Wouldn't that have an impact on the company's moves?
Well, we understand that this wouldn't have any challenge. Don't forget that she oversaw or she presided over the measure. And we understand that it's been successful. The integration has been superb for them. And so, she feels that she's paid her dues and she needs to move on, Now,
who is taking over from her?
She will be replaced by one Mitao Kamba Ngwamba. She is coming from the East African side, but we understand that prior to her appointment to come and replace Roshi, she was the head of Tigo in Senegal until that, particular company as well in Senegal was sold off. And she happens to also have some experience with MTN and then Airtel in Zambia. And so she happens to also have some kind of experience within the telecommunication industry, especially on the African turf, if I'll put it.
And how are stakeholders, including subscribers of Airtel Tigo, taking this particular announcement? Is it kind of a shock to them?
Well, I must say that this has come as a shock. We thought that, a new entity, that is Airtel Tigo, having taken over, she would be there for some time before she would actually move on. But, well, it's business as usual. Business is still going on. A new person who also has that kind of experience is also coming in. It's interesting that it's another female, this time around. It's not a male that is coming in to take over their business. And so let's keep our fingers crossed and see what will happen.
All right, so those are pictures of Roshi Motman, who has just exited from Airtel Tigo and hopes to pursue other objectives elsewhere. All right, so any final, thing that we need to know about this particular exit?
Don't forget that this woman took over Tigo then, at a time where there was a few challenges, but we must say that she happened to steer the ship and managed to ensure that she plays it very well. One of the things that she's, hailed for, at Airtel Tigo is the fact that she's able to nurture talents when she sees them. And so she's one of the people who would identify you and help you to be able to find your space within the company's work environment, if I'll put it. She was also, if you remember, named in 2015 as the best CEO as far as the telecommunication industry is concerned. And so she's been able to have some kind of achievements that she backs it. She's been able to bag and she's walking away with.
So let's hope the new one is able to turn the company's fortunes around soon when she takes over.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And that was Norvan Upper Hayford from Joy Business. And on that note, to wrap up this afternoon's edition of the Marketplace, it's been great having you on board. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We are free. Have a good afternoon.